Okay, station, this is Houston. Are you guys ready for the event?
Okay, station, this is Houston. Are you guys ready for the event?
Station's ready for the event.
Putnam Museum of History and Natural Science. This is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Kim Finley, here with students at the Putnam Museum. How do you hear me?
Hey, Kim and Putnam, we hear you loud and clear aboard the International Space Station. Welcome aboard today.
We're excited. Hope has a question for you.
Were you scared to go into space?
Well, that's a great question. Was I scared to go into space? You know, astronauts, we don't really like to use the word scared. But, of course, on the day of launch and the day of landing and everything, there's a lot of dynamics going on. So we're concerned. I think we're just a little bit scared, and we really pay attention to what's going on. But we think it's really important that we get up here to space and, of course, that we come home safely and everything. So in those big days, we're concerned. We pay a lot of extra attention and a little bit scared, just like everybody gets a little bit scared sometimes. But it's all for a good cause. That's a great question.
Now, Tabitha has a question.
What made you to live and work on the ISS? And are you happy to be an astronaut?
Hi, Tabitha. I'm very happy to be an astronaut. Being an astronaut is a lot of fun because you get to do lots of fun things. You get to float around in space, but mostly because you get to work with such great people. I spent a lot of years training even just for this mission up here on the space station. And so during that time, you get to fly jets, you get to practice spacewalks in a big, deep swimming pool, but mostly you get to work with great people who are very smart and who love what they do, and there's nothing better than that.
Thank you. We have a question from Yasminique.
Are there any mental challenges to being so isolated, and do you ever feel claustrophobic?
Well, that's a great question, too. We are isolated. We only get to see each other for months at a time, and we don't really get to see other faces every day. We do feel close to the people we're working with in mission control and everything. So, you know, we have good communication with Earth, but of course we know we can't come home instantly anytime we want to. So we're in a special place, and you kind of have to deal with that a little bit mentally. I think everybody, too, like we get a little scared once in a while. If you put us in just the right places, you kind of have to learn to accept your environment. And we have to fly in a tiny capsule sometimes, and we get in suits where they're a little bit tight and that sort of thing. But you kind of learn little techniques to deal with that. You just kind of put yourself in a happy place and just enjoy the moment you're in, kind of. So you can get through those things if you work through them and just meet the challenge, I guess.
And next, a question from Jesus.
What happens if someone gets hurt or sick?
Hi, Jesus. Well, that's a good question. We think about that quite a bit. I happen to be a doctor, but we don't have a doctor on every flight. But we do always have two people trained to be medical officers, is what we call them. So there's always somebody ready to has some training to take care of someone if they get sick or hurt. So what we have is a lot of equipment that'll take care of first aid. It could take care of you if you get really sick and need even medicine in your vein, that sort of thing. But if you get really sick and you really have to be in a hospital or otherwise you might die, then in that case, we always have our Soyuz spaceship, which is our normal ride home, but it's also our ambulance in case something really goes bad. So we could get home within a day if we really had to, if someone were that sick.
Thank you. Now we have a question from Luis.
What is it like to launch into space?
Well, that's a great question. That's kind of like my favorite part of the whole space flight. This is fun up here, too, but launching on a rocket is a very special experience. I've gotten to fly a space shuttle and a Soyuz rocket, and in both cases, you kind of strap in, you're lying on your back, and you have to get in several hours ahead of time. You're in a spacesuit, and there's lots of pre-launch preparations that you have to do. But there's always a countdown clock, too. And finally, when the moment arrives, when you launch, a lot of vibration, and there's no doubt about it that something special is happening with that rocket. And you feel a lot of shaking. You can kind of sense the noise. You can sense that you're really going through the air fast for a while, and the rocket just pushes and pushes on you. So it's really like pushing, accelerating in a car or something really fast for a really long time. And it takes about 9 minutes of that pushing, and then we're in space. So it's quite a neat experience, and there's some booms and bangs along the way, too, just to make it a little bit more exciting as pieces of the rocket come off. So it's about the most exciting thing I think I'll ever do in my life.
Now a question from Joey. Do you get to just relax and float around sometimes, and is it hard to adjust to the lack of gravity?
Our commander's going to demonstrate here floating around. I always say that floating around in zero gravity makes all the hard work really easy, but it makes a lot of the easy work really hard. So you can imagine if you have to move a big box full of equipment that might weigh 50, 60, 100 pounds. Up here in space, it's not that hard. Just give it a little push, and over time you can push it and move it along. But it's really hard to find a place to put your pencil. And we spend a lot of time figuring out how to put our things so they're organized so they don't float away and they don't get lost. And what's also neat after being here for a little over a month now is that my feet are starting to be like my hands. My feet are good at grabbing handrails like they're doing right now. And I don't even have to think about it. And my hands are becoming kind of like my feet. I move around with my hands a lot more than I ever did on the Earth. So it's a lot of fun.
All right, now we have a question from Texas. How long can someone stay on the space station?
Well, they probably could stay here for years and years and years. I don't know if people would want to, because we really miss Earth also when we're up here. We love being in space, but we really, really miss Earth. We're going to stay, I'm going to stay about 4.5 months. I think Tom's going to be up here maybe around 5 or so. And in a few years, we have an astronaut and a cosmonaut who are going to come stay for an entire year. So that'll be a real test, I think, for them physically and mentally, because it's different being up here because you don't walk. You have to do a lot of special exercises. And, it's a little extra effort with communications and, like you guys mentioned a little bit earlier, the isolation and stuff. So I think a year is probably about as long as really anybody would want to stay at the moment. But we'll have volunteers to stay longer, and someday people will live in space even longer than that. So, but for me, I think 5 months is going to be just a really nice length of time.
Next, we have a question from Javier.
How do you prepare for living in space?
Kim, could you help us out? We didn't quite understand the question.
Our question was, how did you prepare for living in space?
Javier, that's a great question. The way we prepared, and both Kevin and myself and our other crewmates, was starting at about your age right now. We started to work hard in school. For myself, I love to read. I'm very curious. And so we really began preparation at about your age. Now, as you get older, you start to think, what do you want to be when you grow up? If it's a technical field or any field at all, really, because who knows what the future astronauts are going to be like, then you pick a field that you want to go into and you fall in love with it, and then you'll be really good at it if you love it. So I got ready for this flight really when I was your age. Then when I became an astronaut, a couple of years more of training, and then 2 more years of training just for this flight. But you know what? We love it. We love the training the whole time, so it's really not a problem to do that.
Thank you. Now we have a question from Cadence.
What things have you seen from the International Space Station?
Was the question, what can we see from the International Space Station?
Yes, it was.
Okay, that's a great question. We can see the Earth like a big ball out the window. It's one of our favorite things to do. The windows are very popular places to be. And we go around the Earth once every 90 minutes. So as we go around the Earth, we can see the oceans, we can see the continents, we can see a lot of clouds. Sometimes we can see icebergs and islands. We can see lines of contrails from aircraft flying below us. And we can see cities at night all lit up. We can also see the stars in the night sky, and they don't twinkle for us out here because they're not coming through air in the atmosphere, so they're just nice, bright stars. And then, of course, we can see the sun and the moon just like you can on Earth. So we see the same kinds of things you do, but we get to see the Earth on just a little bit grander scale, and it's really a beautiful view. We send down a lot of photography, and I hope some of you get to see it. It's a special thing.
Thank you. Now we have a question from Daniel.
What is your favorite part of living in space?
That is a very hard question to answer because so much of it is exciting and fun. I'd have to say, though, the two things, living in zero gravity and looking out of the window. As Kevin described, looking out of the window never gets old. It's always exciting. We're always looking for a minute or two to where we can fly over to the window and look outside, because it's a perspective that so few people get, and really changes the way you look at the world and the way you look at your fellow mankind around you. So those are my two favorite things.
Thank you. Now we have a question from Anna.
How do you communicate with your family and friends?
Well, we have a telephone that goes through the computer system, so we can actually make calls to our family and friends if we want to. We have email systems, too, so that we can write letters to them, and then they get down to them back and forth. Sometimes NASA takes good care of us by sending up maybe some videos or some photos that our family and friends send up specially for us to kind of entertain us during our long stays on board. So that's really fun. And then once a week, we get kind of a special treat where they set us up with a video conference, and we go to a computer, and it has a camera built into it, and we can see our family or friends on the monitor and have maybe a half an hour or 45-minute conversation with our family and friends on Earth. We get to see them, and they get to see us almost with no delay. So it's a really nice way to communicate.
Here's a question from Aaron.
How do you exercise?
Well, Aaron, exercise is very, very important up here. You might know that if we didn't exercise, our bones and our muscles would waste away, because right now we're not even exercising, even though it may look like we're sort of standing here. Our muscles are almost completely relaxed. So we have a treadmill, and we have bungees that hold us down to the treadmill, so we can almost act like we're walking, and our leg muscles feel like they're walking. And we can also ride on a bicycle. It gives us some resistance, so at times it feels like we're just coasting along the road. Sometimes it feels like we're riding up a very steep hill, and that's a good workout. And then I think my favorite machine is the resistance exercise machine, and that's like lifting weights, and it helps keep our muscles strong. And you can do everything from squats to bench press, that sort of thing. So I think they've got that all figured out really well. We've got a lot of great things to do for exercise up here.
Thank you. Now we have a question from Brady.
What is the hardest thing about being in space?
Well, I think we work pretty hard up here. We stay very busy because there's just a few of us up here, and there are a lot of scientists on the planet who have a lot of great ideas for things you can do in microgravity, things you can do with the space station looking towards space and looking towards Earth. So it's a very, very valuable place to be, and we're very busy. Hundreds of experiments going on the space station kind of at a time. We're not involved with all those every day, but we're still helping with many of them every day. So we stay very busy. Also, it's kind of a confusing place to live because we have things on the floors like refrigerators, and we have science racks on our ceiling, and every wall kind of looks the same, and every wall is very busy, and it's very easy to get confused about which way things should be oriented and lose track of things. If you let go of something, it will sneak away from you because the ventilation will carry it away very quietly. So it's kind of easy to lose things up here. Everything has to be tied down with Velcro or put on a hook or something. So that makes life a little bit difficult. Just things like eating your food and sleeping in zero gravity are a little bit different. So I think that's probably the most challenging part of being in space.
Here's a question from Danny.
Does it snow in space?
Does it snow in space? And it does not snow in space. And the reason why is because there's no atmosphere up here. If you had a little bit of moisture out in the vacuum of space, it would very quickly turn to ice and then what we say, sublimate away and turn into a gas very quickly. So nope, we're above the weather. We're about 250 miles up, so we're way above the atmosphere where all the weather occurs.
Question from Alexis.
What are some jobs or tasks that you do regularly at the space station?
I'm sorry, what? Could you just repeat that one more time for us?
We are wondering what are some of the jobs that you do aboard the space station?
Oh, that's a really great question. We have many different kinds of jobs. So one of them is we just have to take care of the space station. We have many systems that we have to provide life support for us, to provide, the air that we breathe, and to provide services like we have a space toilet that we take care of very carefully, and communication systems that we take care of, and cooling systems. So many things need to be worked on every day. So we spend some of our time just working on the space station systems to make sure everything stays in order. And then the other jobs are doing the science for the scientists on the ground and the engineers who have designed our experiments for us. They've made it as easy as they can for us so that we can just go up to a rack that has a science experiment in it, perhaps, and just turn it on and maybe just get things tuned up for them, and then they can watch it on the ground with cameras. We might put new samples in or something like that each day so that we can get the science done. So we are just the eyes, ears, and hands, if you will, of the many scientists on the ground who wish they could come up here to do the research, but because it's so expensive to get here and back, just a few people get to come. So we're just here to help them out.
All right, we have another question for you.
I was wondering, what is the most interesting thing you've done at NASA?
Well, this trip right now really tops them all, I'd say. And as Kevin said, launches are very exciting. So the launching on the space shuttle and launching on the Soyuz is probably the most interesting and exciting thing, certainly in my professional career. I've been a doctor, I've been several other things in my life, but that tops them all, I'd say. But as I mentioned before also, the people that I get to work with at NASA, who are all very curious, smart folks, and all of us working together to get a job done, that's one of the best things as well.
Gentlemen, we can't thank you enough for the time you spent with us today. Boys and girls, can we give them a huge round of applause? Say thank you to the astronauts.
Thank you so much for having us. The questions were wonderful. It's great to hear your voices, and I'm just excited to see the future leaders of tomorrow. You will be going into space or sending someone into space in the future, I hope. Thank you.
Station, this is Houston ACR. Thank you. That concludes the event.
Thank you, Putnam Museum of History and Natural Science and students. Station, we are now resuming operational audio communications.